Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today we talk with a coach in the blue collar space. Jeff Plant is head business coach at BDR, Business Development Resource. He specializes in providing training and coaching services to the skilled trades industries. Jeff jumped into the trades after high school in the electrical field, but soon got started in HVAC. He worked his way up the ladder in the industry from helper to tech to COO and even had ownership in companies as well. So he truly has seen all sides of the industry, which led him to where he is today, helping people learn and grow as blue-collar professionals and business owners. Listen in as Jeff gives tangible advice for technicians and business owners alike on how to succeed in the blue-collar business world. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. You can now find this podcast on iHeartRadio, SiriusXM, and Pandora. As always, we rely on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Jeff Plant. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I'm super excited about my guest today. I've gotten a whole 18 minutes to get to know him. The first 4 minutes we couldn't hear each other, but that's all right. I know he's a cool guy. I'm really excited to get started here. Jeff, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh, man, I'm excited about being here too. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to the next little bit of time we get to spend together. Yeah,
absolutely, man. We got to discussing a little bit about what you do, which I know we're going to get into later in the episode. But I'm super excited because I know we're going to get into some things that I'm passionate about, that our listeners are passionate about. And but before we get there, I kind of want to introduce you to the audience so they know who we're talking to today. So if you wouldn't mind kind of letting us know who Jeff Plant is and, where you come from, how you got to where you are today, just, give us the overview of who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the trades for around 30 years. When I came out of high school, I wasn't necessarily at that time really excited about going to college. So, I actually went into trades with the electrical trade with IBEW and finished out there and didn't want to necessarily travel the country at that time for any work. So I had a friend of mine, believe it or not, that's just started an AC company. He goes, "Hey, man, why don't you come over? You can be my Fuki guy." And I said, well, anybody that knows what Fuki is, that is not cool. It's the duct sealant stuff. And, I got plenty of haircuts from that. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth. Yeah. I cut my teeth sealing ductwork in attics and houses. And because of my electrical background, just naturally migrated into service. So service tech, service manager, held many different positions working for companies, all the way up to chief operating officer of a company. And then I also had ownership in a company with some people. And so just been blessed to see both sides. I've been blessed to see how the field affects management, how management affects the field, how it all affects from an ownership perspective. And so that's led me to where I am now. And, working with companies that, they did a couple $100,000 a year to, $120 million a year to $600 million a year, and work with an organization that annually, they were a national company that annually did, $1.6 billion a year. So was just fortunate to be at different levels with management and exposure. And that's led to me where I'm at now. So with BDR, I take my experience, and I like it because it's a good blend, because again, I can see how the field affects management, how management affects the field. And I take that experience and I help people in their companies get to the next level. So BDR is really about transitioning people who maybe came out of the field to start a company, transitioning into ownership and how to run businesses. So it's been a blessing that I get to pass on what I've learned to other people, help them be successful. That's my life goal. But also at the same time, continue to learn from my clients I work with and other avenues. So it's just a fantastic thing. I love this trade. This trade is the best trade that's out there, Josh. It really is.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. I appreciate you, kind of taking us through that. And I think that, you said a lot of things in there that are going to relate and resonate with a lot of the people that listen to this show. First and notably, the fact that you said you were right out of high school, you weren't super excited about the college route, as you went the trades route. I want to kind of dig into that just a little bit, because I think there might be a little more relatability there as well. So did you go to college at all after high school, or did you jump right into the trades, and why?
So later on, I actually did go back. I didn't go. I went to some actual course or campus courses, but I did a lot of my studies online. So I went back and I got a business degree, got a mechanical science degree. I'm not knocking that, because that certainly helped me through theory and things. But I tell people, I said, the college that I've worked proves that I can read a book, sit in a class, and pass a test. My life experience and my trade experience came from the fact that I was blessed enough to have mentors in my life that really poured into me. So I did go back and get that, but my success in this industry came from just on the streets, working it, seeing what hurts, seeing what works, and learning from those. So,
yeah, and that's the story I hear a lot, right? Is college is great for some people and some things. And, I've had to clarify on the show a couple of times, I'm not anti-education. I'm pro the right education for the right individual, right? If you want to be a surgeon, all right, I would rather you go to college and learn how to do that than watch a YouTube video and try to cut me open. That's just me, but that, just to the point that you're kind of making there is, we talk a lot about success and what that means. And I think we were talking a little bit about this before the show as to how, the general education system has a box of success that they like to point people into. And oftentimes the trades and blue collar professions don't fit nicely into that box. Something we often have to figure out on our own. One of the things I like to say is, a lot of people in the trades enter the trades by accident, but they stay on purpose, right? And because once you figure out the benefits and the opportunities, that exist in these industries, it's kind of like, mind blown. You can't believe that there's so much that exists. Why didn't anybody tell us that?
Absolutely. And it's the stigma. I think we still have the stigma that the trades are construction workers. There's a portion of that, right? So, nobody wants to be that, have that stigma. A lot of people don't want to have that stigma on their children or the kids don't want to do that. But there's so much more that we miss inside of our trades, the pathways that people can go. I started off painting ductwork in houses and moved up to where I'm at now. And not saying that I've reached the pinnacle, but certainly the pathway has led me to a great career to be able to give back and help other people realize that as well. So I think the one thing that we have to do in our industry is realize that we have to show people the overall picture and path that they can take in these trades that can really lead to some beneficial career paths.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really well said. It leads me to another question. When you started out, right, and you were doing this duct work and stuff like that, did you ever think that you would be where you are today?
No, of course not. Back then I had goals and things I wanted to do. I didn't think I'd be here. And quite honestly, when I started with that, looking back, it's only by blessing that I'm here, because there was no career path for me back then. So and this is something that we work with clients on. When I started at that company, there was absolutely no career path. The only reason that I got promotions was because I was the one there the longest. And that's not always the best. When my first service manager job, Josh, I was not good. I was not a good serviceman. I didn't know what to do. I thought that my responsibility was I was the one that the clients and the owner yelled at. that was my job description, right? So there was no career path. And that's one of the things that hurts us in our industry today is we still have that same model. People join our companies and they don't see a path. They don't see a progression path Therefore, they go, well, there's no room here. This is hard work. I'm going to go do something else. So we really focus and work with clients to develop career paths with people, especially young people. They can see they're going somewhere, they'll stay.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up, because this is something that I've heard once or twice on this show in the past, and something that we've recently adopted into my company as well. But the importance of career path, I don't want to say that it's more important now than it was. It was just as important back then, but nobody thought about it, right? It wasn't even really even a thing that anybody constructed or kept top of mind. Not unless there was an extremely forward thinker, and I'm talking specifically in the blue collar space, right? But it is very important. A lot of people have found great success in the skilled trades despite not having a career path in front of them. But, the generation today thrives on being able to see the next step, right? And being able to see what's next, number one, and number two, how to achieve that next step, right? So I imagine that the importance of that, and especially when we start talking about retention and things like that we struggle with in the blue collar industry, it's got to be almost an imperative piece to specifically, what you help clients with today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, just think of this way, and when my generation, or even before, when you're talking about traditionalists or baby boomers or baby boomers, they woke up, they went to work, and that's what they did. And there were factory workers that did the same thing for 50 years, right? That's what they did. The generation nowadays they're very merit-based, very reward-based advancement. So like you could buy a video game. I can buy the same video game, same exact game. You could advance to level 10 in 3 months, and I might be at level 2 in 6 months. But every time there's a level achieved, there's always some kind of bells and whistles that go off as a celebration. Our generation nowadays are programmed the same way. If we take our generation nowadays and we stick them in an old model of apprenticeship, that you're going to be an apprentice 1 for a year, you're going to be apprentice 2 for a year, they get bored and they start jumping ship. Versus if we set goals for them and they achieve those goals, and there's rewards at each achievement, that models what we call gamification. It models how they've been programmed. So if we could just shift how people can advance in a career, I promise you, the younger generation will see that. Otherwise, they're going to come in, they're going to see, man, I'm going to be stuck at this position for this long, or I'm going to be stuck at this position with no promise of advancement. I don't want to do this. I'm moving on. So we have to have those defined career paths. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So gamification, and then it also, I would imagine, at the same time, encourages meritocracy, right? Because to your point before, you were promoted into a service manager position because you were there the longest, not necessarily because you were the most qualified, right? And so, more and more we're finding that, to your point again about the video game, I might get somewhere in, to 10 more levels, than you in a shorter amount of time, and as a meritocracy, I should be rewarded for that. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, like people in the office, what happens in our office sometimes. We really got to look at this broad spectrum across our company. Like in the office, if you have 2 people, and this happens all the time, but if you have 2 people in your office that do the same task, and one gets the task done by 11 a.m. at a high level of efficiency, and the other person gets the task done by 3:30 or 4 with a medium average efficiency, you know what the reward is for the first person? More work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
So we give them, we burden them with more work and still allow the other one to operate at medium efficiency. So we're our own worst enemies when it comes to labor. And labor is our biggest asset right now. Labor is that's the most valuable asset. We've got to look at how can I maximize my labor. At BDR, we call it leverage to prime. We want to make sure all of our labor is leveraged to prime. So how do I get people first of all, turn their face toward the trade. But we got to get them to view, we got to get their perspective different. We got to get them to perceive our trade differently. And when I can bring somebody in and say, hey, you know what, as a technician, I feel based on your skills, you're about a level 3, but here's what a level 5 technician can make, and here's the definitive steps to get there. And you can get there in as little as 3 years or 2 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Somebody can see that. It's a game changer for this generation. It really is.
I bet. And I bet it's really hard to execute on for some companies, right? Because it's a whole new way of thinking. It's a whole new mindset. It's a whole new process. Because not only like having the trajectory is one thing, right? You can see it. It's, hey, level 1, level 2, level 3. It's gamified. It looks great, and even if you have requirements to pass through the stages, this is how you do it. You need to be proficient in this, and this, and then you can be considered for the next level. The execution involved in that, I would imagine, is where most people get hung up, right? Because it looks pretty, but actually having something to support it is it can be hard work, I would imagine, right? Having somebody to view those checks and balances, having the curriculum in place to actually measure the performance. Is that all stuff that you have to fix before putting the trajectory in place for a lot of clients?
Well, the mindset has to be fixed first, absolutely. Because I've literally had people tell me, well, if they make it, they're going to be making too much money. I'm like, well, that could be up in the top 10 of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But it's because it comes from they just don't understand the process. And it's this is if you set the tiers up properly. This is all about scaling. What this really is about scaling and growing your business. Scaling and growing are two different things, but they work in conjunction with one another. And you have to be proficient in both. So if I have people moving up the levels, that means they're producing more revenue. They've gone to more training classes. They're hitting our safety requirements. So they are serving our clients at a higher level. That means I can afford to pay them that money. And to be level 4, level 5, you had to bring 2 other people up to level 1 at least. So I'm building really my own farming system inside my company. I know it's tough. I know labor's still a challenge, but what's the alternative? Well, what we've been doing for the past 5 years has not been working for the most part. Career paths work. So we have at BDR, we have what's called a career advancement program. And one of our coaches wrote this out. And it literally lays out and even has the modules. There's a system out there called Interplay Learning.
Yeah.
And it has the modules. You know Interplay, right?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I want to pause there real quick and let people know, I don't remember what episode it is, but Doug Donovan has been on the show before talking about his product. So go ahead with the Interplay Learning.
Yeah, so it has some of those modules laid out in there because Interplay Learning is actually what we call an SAI partner of ours, Strategic Advantage Partner. So we recommend that product to our clients. So it lays out modules and takes all these things. So it's literally a whole complete plan for technicians to follow and companies to follow. But go back to what you said, Josh. It's hard to implement and sometimes hard to track. And here's the biggest challenge with tracking is the other thing we're stuck in is annual reviews. When you do annual reviews, I promise you can go in there and talk for 30 minutes. The technician is hearing this. Dollar. Because on an annual review, they're waiting to hear how much raise they're going to get. So this program actually puts you in a position where you're doing success reviews, whether it's monthly or quarterly. It doesn't have to be a full annual. You're just measuring how far they are. Which, when we get to the end of the episode, if you ask me what I define success by, I'll answer that. But I'm going to tell you that one of my mottos I live by, if I can help other people achieve their dreams, they'll help me achieve mine.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. And really really powerful information there. You know, it's amazing too, because we're only talking about one small piece of of everything that we could talk about. And so I do want to challenge my listeners right now, you know, to even pause or rewind or make sure you take good notes on this, because, you know, the power of having, you know, that those levels and that trajectory for incoming applicants and recruits is just, it's imperative. It could change your entire business. You know, it is some work, but it can make a huge impact. I want to shift gears just a little bit now, because you had mentioned that you work with a lot of technicians who are starting businesses, right? Technicians who are becoming business owners. So they're making that transition between being from being an employee to an entrepreneur. So can you speak a little bit on, well, first of all, am I accurate in that statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. A large portion of our trade is technicians that started a business. Yes.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I wasn't misspeaking. So, you know, if you could maybe talk a little bit about some of the biggest pitfalls you see when somebody is making the transition between being a technician and opening their own business. You know, if there's some things that maybe stand out that could help our audience, you know, maybe they're in a transition right now and they need to be aware of some critical things that you could shed some light on.
Yeah. And you know, Josh, I'll use myself as an example. When I came out of the field and started going into management, it's a mind shift. And one thing that I had to admit to myself was when I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. I couldn't fake it. I remember sitting in a meeting one time and somebody was showing me a balance sheet, and I was just kind of looking, going, "Yeah, oh yeah, that's interesting. That's good." I didn't have any idea what I was looking at. I was hoping that they weren't going to ask any more questions. So the one thing that I think that we need to look at is when a lot of times what we see when somebody comes out of the field and start their own business, very, very, very skilled at fixing things, but maybe not so skilled at the business side of things. You know, what it takes to run a business. Again, that's a mindset shift. So, you know, one of the things that we work with, when I work with clients, is helping them understand the business aspect, helping them understand true cost. You know, because there's a lot of people that will say, "Man, if I can say, I'll buy this contactor for $12, I'll sell it for $60, I'll be rich." You know, and so understanding what it really takes, the cost of running a business, the dynamics of running a business, and then structure. Structure is super important. So that's one. That's some basic things that we work with clients to help that transition. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely important things too. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you got to be willing to admit that you don't know what you don't know. You know, admittedly, kids are great at this, right? I use this analogy all the time. Like, you know, that's something that kids do far, far better than 99% of adults. They don't give a shit what they sound like, who they impress, or how dumb they sound. They just will ask question after question after question. And if they don't understand something, they're undaunted by it. They'll ask questions until they understand, you know. But as we grow up, right, we develop these fears and these barriers and, you know, this self-image, right? And it's really hard for us to get out of our own way and, you know, admit to people who we want to impress, you know, first and foremost, that there's something that we don't know. And man, I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times in your line of work, but man, I would imagine this simple fact could be detrimental to somebody's growth and development.
Absolutely. So I remember the road I was on. I remember the two cities I was traveling between when I was riding with one of my mentors, and he just told me that was the biggest download that I've got. That's one of the biggest downloads in my entire career. And he just told me, you know, the old saying, you know, Jeff, you're the smartest person at the table. You need to pick up your tray and go to another table. You know, your job as a leader is not to be the smartest person in the room, but gather the smartest people and put them in a position to be successful. So I really put that into practice inside the company. And what I didn't realize, I do realize now because I do leadership training, but what I didn't realize is he was literally taking me from a level 1 position up to the next levels. Because one of the struggles with level one leaders, which is positional leaders, is we don't want to admit we don't know anything. We don't want people around us smarter than us because it makes us feel inferior. And we hold other people down. We hold our companies down. So everybody starts with position, but to get to that next level, we have to earn the permission, which is level two, of people around us, and that's building that relationship and trusting them. Those are the companies that you see are very successful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, easier said than done in practice, right? And especially if you're trying to overcome these barriers. That's one of the things that I had to learn too. I mean, listen, when we're younger, we think we know it all, right? Our ego is up here and we're like, we are the smartest person in the room. We're going to build a room with 1 billion people that are just as smart as me, but no one's ever going to be smarter than me. And that's just the way. Listen, when you're a teenager or when you're young in your 20s and stuff, I think that's part of it. But the sooner that you can learn that will never be true, the sooner that you can learn, to be humble and to check your ego at the door and be able to be open to this kind of stuff, the sooner you're going to be able to realize that success, in any type of leadership position. I mean, all the way from manager to COO to business owner, whatever it may be, that's the bottom line. So really incredible advice there. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I hope you listeners out there are still taking notes because this is some good stuff here. I want to touch a little bit without getting too deep into it, right? You had mentioned understanding business, right? And the cost of materials, the cost of doing business, let's just call it that, right? There are so many different costs, and we can't possibly go through all of them on one podcast. Even if it was Joe Rogan's podcast and we were sitting here for 3 hours, drinking scotch, it's just not going to happen. There's not enough time, right? But on a higher level, can we explain this concept of your $12 cost capacitor being sold for $60? To anybody listening that hasn't been exposed to the business world, they're thinking to themselves, okay, well, yeah, clearly that's a $48 profit. That's awesome. That's fantastic. It's not a $48 profit. You know that, and I know that. So let's break down maybe just that one part about what other costs don't they see?
Yeah. So if you look at the 2 or 3 main cost categories, so you have this part that costs, let's say $15, round numbers.
Yeah.
I don't want to think too much today. Round numbers. So $15. Well, you have to have labor to put it in. I'm not even going to get into the inventory side of it, but it's out on your shelf for 6 weeks.
No.
But, yeah, so you got to have labor to put it in. And let's say you do end up with that, $48 difference between the cost and what you sold it for. But you've got $52 of overhead that you have to cover. So what people don't realize is when you look at a very simple profit and loss figure, you have revenue at the top, you have COGS, which is cost of goods sold. Those are all what we call direct costs. All the costs that go directly to the job. That gives you a gross profit. Then that gross profit has to pay for all your overhead expenses, lease, your building space, your automobile expenses, things like that.
Office staff.
Paper, pen, office staff, all that stuff. And everybody has a portion of overhead, regardless of what side of the company it is. Even if you're working in your garage, you still have a portion of overhead to cover. So that gross profit pays for that. So let's just say that you earn $48 and your overhead was $45. Well, wahoo! I could put $3 in my pocket. and wait, I sold it for $60. So these are some of the things we help people, first of all, define what those costs are. A lot of people don't even know what they truly are. They don't know what their true costs are. And if you don't have a good separation between your cost of goods sold and your overhead, that can affect where your pricing goes. So that's one of the things we really dig in and help people understand what those are.
No, I appreciate that. That was the perfect level overview for what I was looking for the audience. It gives us just enough of an idea of what you're talking about to question, maybe I'm really not profiting as much as I think that I'm profiting. because I actually have had this conversation with technicians both in and out of my company as well, because it's an important thing to know whether you're a business owner or whether you're a technician running calls on the street, right? Because, if you're a technician running calls on the street, first and foremost, your number one job is to be a generator, right? It's to generate for the business. And listen, I'm not trying to, I know the whole premise behind not being treated like a number, and that's a whole nother conversation, but the reality of the matter, the fact of the matter is that businesses exist to make money. And if you're part of that, right, your job indirectly or directly is to make the company money, either through efficiencies or through billing or through some other means. So having this knowledge and this understanding of the additional costs necessary, or the additional underlying ways that you cost the company money, is very important, so you can have an idea of how profitable you actually are being, right? And driving your own value up, if you're a technician and not necessarily even a business owner. So really, really good information there. And it actually stems back to the first thing that you said about not knowing what you don't know, right? So really, really great. All right, last piece on this, you had mentioned structure. Man, this is something that I had to learn the old school way too, right? It's, I was a technician in the field for 10 years, before I actually started to get my arms around the back end of the business. And even though my dad was a technician too, he'll be the first to tell you he's a mechanic, he's not a businessman, right? And so we both learned as we were building the business, and this structure thing, man, this is something that it's hard to teach. You can tell, right? And you can point people in the right direction, but it is hard to teach unless you are there in the moment doing it, because you just don't know what structure is supposed to look like, which I think is incredible that, there's a service like yours and people like you out there that are coaching on this specific thing. Because, I've dealt with a lot of coaches. I've worked with a lot of consultants, and there's the mission, vision, values, there's the culture, there's the mindset, there's the understanding the business, there's the leadership quality. Not a lot of them focus on the actual structure. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know that was long-winded. I apologize. I get excited, but the structure is important in business, especially in a new business that's about to grow. Explain to me why.
Well, so that goes back to what I was talking about before, scaling and growth. They're independent, but they work together. So you got to know, because growth is predominantly related to revenue. Scaling is predominantly related to processes and organization. So you can have a lot of growth, but if you don't scale correctly, then you're going to overtask your organizational chart. Or you can have a lot of scaling, and then you have a lot of overhead with no revenue to cover it. So we really show people, and overhead, for the most part, and I don't think it's just isolated to our industry. I think overhead can be a cuss word to people sometimes. Like freaking out. I don't want to get overhead. We're not having any overhead. This one person, I've got one person in the office, and they handle 19 people. So it's really, you have to take it back. When you look at structure, you have to take it back to make sure, what I mentioned before, that every position is leveraged to prime, meaning that inside positions have a job duty and have job description, and they have a workflow process. How do they make the field profitable? I mean, their job is to make them successful. So we show them, based on transactions, when to add people and how that affects their growth and how that increases profitability. So there's different walls in business, that people approach that they have to scale. And so we've got that written out. We've got that laid out for people. If they're interested, they can certainly reach out to us. But that's how we teach people. We show them. We don't just talk about it. We literally show them on paper. Yeah. This is the steps. And when they can grasp it, I think it helps it.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible answer. I really like the differences between scaling and growing. That makes a lot of sense, and it's simple enough, I think, for anybody even new to the business world can understand. And so I really like the way that you put that. All right, we're going to talk about one more thing before I ask you my final question. But I do want to get into just a little bit on leadership. I know I'm passionate about it. I know you're passionate about it. We were talking a little bit before the show. And I'm a believer that leadership is important in the blue collar industries, whether you're in a position of power, like or have direct reports, or whether you're just a technician on the front line. I think that both have their place with the leadership perspective. And one of the things that I've been pushing, in the industry is being able to give leadership training to everybody in the organization in some capacity or another, because, in my business, I like to say I like to breed leaders, not managers, in every aspect of the business. Now, listen, I mean, you and I both know that there's practicalities to this and realistic scenarios and stuff like that. But I want to know from you, what you view leadership as, and what the biggest impact it has, at least from your perspective, on any organization.
So for me, in a nutshell, leadership, great leadership is it's a culture of a company of success. So what that means is that the leader is not the only one talking. I mean, a great leader brings great people together and gets buy-in. Most, if not all, the solutions to the challenges come from their team, and they are put there to help their team become successful. So that's level 5 leadership. There's different levels that you go through. But for me, and my viewpoint is I'm put in a position as a leader so that other people can be successful. That's what I look at. And everything, when you look at business, everything rises and falls on leadership. So when I talk to people in business, I say, if you don't like what's going on in your company, it's your fault. Now, I kind of hit them with that to kind of get their attention. I say, because there's one thing, and if there's anybody listening, you can write this down. It's a great motto to live by. What you tolerate, you come into agreement with. Mm. So if you're tolerating things inside your business, and even if you're tolerating things inside yourself, then you have subconsciously come into agreement with that thing. So we have to address those. We have to take a stand in leadership and address those things and not tolerate things in our businesses anymore, but not be a tyrant. So you mentioned leadership and management. There has to be a balance. Leadership provides the vision. Management looks over and sets processes to manage that vision throughout. If you don't have a good balance, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. One of my favorite quotes comes from General Colin Powell. This one about leadership, where he says that leadership is the art of, what is it?
Getting others to do what you want done.
Shoot. No, man. It's this is gonna bug me. I just used it in something that I wrote, but it's like leadership is what the art of management says isn't possible, or something of that nature. Mm. Don't quote me on that. That was the poor representation of one of my favorite quotes. Gosh, but anyway, it's true, right? It goes back to what you said. Leadership provides the vision. Management, oftentimes provides the accountability to that vision. And I think that it's an important distinction, and it's one of those things. Here's where I view it, and why I love it so much is because, number one, it's probably the most challenging thing that you can begin to learn, right? Above and beyond anything else, above and beyond any technical skill, rewiring a unit or plumbing a new pipe, or, any of that. It's excruciatingly painful to learn sometimes. It can be, right? Because just as you fall down when you learn to skateboard, right? And you make mistakes. With regard to leadership, falling down often comes in the form of leading people the wrong way. And the caveat to that is that it's going to happen, but how you respond when it happens is largely responsible for your growth. That's when the growth happens, right? Because I can give good advice, I can give bad advice, but how I respond when I give bad advice, I learn a lot more from, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And again, it goes back to leadership is this mystical word, and we ask or put people in positions to do something that they've never had. We ask them to be a leader, but they've never been under a leader. So it's a learned trait. It can be learned. But it's something that lacks in every area of our dealings. But it has to be in place. We have to learn how to become leaders of our people. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and it kind of goes back to when people ask, "Are leaders born or are leaders made?" And I'm a firm believer that although you can be born and maybe even brought up with some leadership qualities, character traits, I think it's largely learned, right? I think it's largely something that you can be taught. And it boils down to intent, right? What's your intent?
Yeah.
And if you have a good intent, you've already got the makings of a leader. You just gotta put it together and do it for the right reasons.
John Maxwell. It's funny you said that, because he said that somebody asked him a question one time. They said, "John, are leaders born?" And he goes, "I've never met an unborn leader." He said the same exact answer you just said, that different people might have different traits, but it's all about the heart. And the biggest trait of a leader is to have a servant's heart. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense, and I like that a lot. So I hope my listeners are listening, as you should be, as that's why you're called listeners. So, no, a lot of good takeaways here. Listen, I do want to move to wrap it up, though, because I know that, some people listening to this are on their way to work and stuff like that. We try not to have them break up the episode. So final question for you, Jeff, a question that I like to ask all my guests, because I am fascinated by all the different answers that I get. But in the skilled trades, we talk a lot about success. We talk a lot about how it looks different for different people, and there's not one singular definition. It's largely subjective. So I want to ask you, what is your definition of success, and how have the blue-collar skilled trades helped you to achieve it?
Yeah. So the definition of success for me is the amount of people around me that are doing better than I ever did. So me as a leader, that's my goal. I've been very successful in business, very successful in the trade. These trades have provided a great living, great life for me and my family. But at this point, my definition of success is I want everybody around me, first, if they have an interaction with me, I want them to leave that interaction better than they came into that interaction. I add value to people. But at the same time, I want people around me, my clients that I coach, I want them to do far better than I ever did. And when they hit that, then I feel that I've been successful. That's just me. So.
No, I love that. It's a phenomenal answer, Jeff. I really appreciate it. All right, we're going to move to close. Before we do, where can people find you? Where can people find BDR? How do they go about getting in touch with you if they need something?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, bdrco.com. We have a lot of resources there. Of course, you can connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We've got all our YouTube channel. What's the other one? There's Facebook. What's the Instagram? There we go. Instagram. And we're always putting free content out on that stuff. YouTube channel. Anyway, go follow us, go like us, all that stuff. And there's a whole lot of information out there that you can gather that can help you in your business. So definitely. And if anybody needs something, they can certainly reach out to the office, and somebody will be back in touch with them. So sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today, Jeff. I know you're a busy guy, but thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience.
Oh, Josh, I really appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to any time in the future we can hang out together.
Likewise, my friend. Let's make it happen.
All right.
All right. Till next time.